Hello internet, hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm gonna talk with a competitive player right here, actually Panny. And why don't you just introduce yourself?
I'm Panny. It's probably what everybody knows me by. My real life name is Panagiotis Martikis. I'm from Greece, and I'm 17 years old. And currently, I'm not in a team.
Oh, okay, but what teams did you play for? Did you win any big tournaments or what did you do?
I'd say the team that everybody knows me from, which is probably my most successful, is FIT.
Yes, I know that.
It did go under a couple names and a bit of roster changes. It first began, I'd say, around maybe like 5, 6 months ago, where I played in Ahan Portal League with ProBusk and a player named Jolam as well. And we found a player named Sequence in that league, and we asked him to join our team. And that's how we were 4 people, and we started playing together and kind of trying out a fifth player. And after a while, we picked up Jonathan Fan, who is a really old. He was like in the first Lions team, like around like a year ago or so, when they were first made with My Nuts and those guys. So that's how we first began, and then we kind of just practiced and played about a bunch of tournaments, but we didn't really win anything huge. We kind of got, I'd say, the top like 5, 6 like slots in a couple tournaments, and we were doing really well in scrims, and that's pretty much why we eventually went to DreamHack after a couple of months of playing together.
Yes, I actually heard of it a lot back then. But why did you disband again? What happened?
We did go to DreamHack and we played BYOC, where we lost to Team It's Gosu in the semifinals. And at the time, Team It's Gosu was a very good team. They were probably one of the top teams then. Unfortunately, they didn't do very well at DreamHack, but we played that tournament, and then we kind of just, like most teams, kind of relaxed after DreamHack had ended for around a couple of weeks. I'd say around 2 weeks or so, we kind of just chilled and we didn't really focus on scrims at all because most teams were kind of relaxing after a huge tournament like that. And when we came back, we kind of talked to each other and about who can play what. And one of our players, who was Jolan, was actually on vacation at the time, and we just started scrimming as a team of 4. And then we eventually got news of the DreamHan Summer Champion Tournament, Summer Championships is the tournament that Complexity won. So we played that for a while, or we signed up for that with Archie Tiger, and we played as a 5-man roster there. And after that, I think we just kind of had problems in between our team with players and kind of attitudes and motivation issues as well. So we kind of disbanded from there, and then Jonas Fan went to QSQ Squad 357, and Archie Tiger, I believe, is in Druids now. So those 2 guys kind of went to other teams. But as for myself and Sequence and Probusk and Jolam, I believe Probusk is actually playing with Pika right now. And me and myself, Sequence, and Jolam, who's playing on an account called ISAC right now, are currently just not in the team. I believe Jolam and Sequence might be playing together in the DreamHack tournament. But that's kind of our story up to date.
Okay. So I just want to ask you a few questions about some things, just to have the opinion of a pro gamer, because I always think that's very interesting to just hear someone that's actually good at a game talk about the game. So this is gonna be a very, not exactly a question, it's just gonna be I want to hear your opinion on Oogie.
Oogie. I've never played him, but I played against him and with him in TMM. I think he's a really strong hero, like a lot of S2 heroes. He kind of has the ability to tank like a whole team and do a good amount of damage as well. So, but it's hard to say if he's good competitively or not. But in general, he looks like a decent hero right now.
Okay. And so you haven't played him, I guess. Then there really isn't a whole lot to say about that. And Solstice, you played that one, tried that one, or not it?
Solstice, I've seen him being played at pretty much every Team M game in Alpic. Somebody gets him and they pretty much go jungle. I believe he's a jungle hero. I myself as well have not played him, but he looks like a really strong hero. He has like an ability like Magmus with his stun, and he has like he kind of has a nomad skills where he jumps on people or he kind of runs really fast towards them. So I think he's a really strong hero, and I would not be surprised like if he was picked up competitively after he gets released, of course, in tournament mode.
Okay. Now, talking about heroes that got released in tournament mode, a while back, both Draconis and Berserker got released into tournament mode. That has been a while now. Now, Draconis immediately got picked up, and ever since then has been kind of destroying the competitive scene. Like, he even got nerfed, and it's just his farming potential is amazing. But why don't we ever see Berserker? I always felt like this hero can actually do things. Like, you just have to tank up on him, and then he puts out tons and tons of damage.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. A lot of people have said that as well. Other competitive players who I've spoke with, and they agree that he's a really, really strong hero, and he has a lot of potential to do just an incredible amount of damage if you give him free farm in the early game stage. Now, I myself, again, have not played this hero. Maybe I've played him once or twice. And he seems like a decent hero. He has a chase ability where he is able to be granted vision of a hero. And then he, of course, has a stun. And I don't know his other skill, but I know his ultimate has something to do with him doing a bit more damage and attack speed, I believe. But he takes more damage in return.
The ultimate works based on your maximum HP. It's kind of like Ursa's ultimate, if that helps.
Okay. It's like, I'm not familiar with Dota that much, but yeah, I understand what it is anyway. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure why he hasn't been picked up. I just think a team hasn't really worked him into a lineup yet. But I definitely think he has potential.
Oh, okay, so it's just that they can't fit him into a lineup. Now, another hero got released into the competitive scene, Blitz. And I guess everybody considers this hero to be a joke because he's terrible. I myself do consider him terrible as well. But for some odd reason, some Russian team picked him up during a tournament. And this was like a top tier Russian scene tournament. I don't know exactly. I wanted to watch the replay, but I couldn't find it anywhere, and the match ID doesn't work in the European client. Now, what do you think about Blitz? So this is the last question about Neo Heroes, by the way.
Well, what I personally think, or before I say my opinion, I think that pretty much every player thinks he's like a really trash hero, and he doesn't really have any mobility in any game, at least competitively. But, and I mean, to some extent that's right, because I mean, one of his skills kind of just makes him run fast, and he doesn't really have, he's a ranged hero, correct? So, and his range is pretty short. It's like an Andromeda, maybe a little more like a Moon Queen.
Yeah, he has like 450 or something like that, and it's not a lot.
I think that might be one of the reasons, just because of the fact that in this current metagame, teams always pick a hero who can harass against the suicide, especially in that lineup, or even in a dual lane. I mean, any hero who can pretty much have the range to deny creeps and as well harass the other team plays a huge role in laning phase for support. So I think that's one of the main reasons why people don't pick him up. But at the same time, I think he provides a stun and have an ability which makes his team run faster. I think in that sense he has some power as a support hero, which is what I would put him on. And I mean, right now I was watching a scrim which is TDM versus Pika, and TDM is actually using him as a ward bitch support, but he's not doing very well. So, but I can't speak too much for him because I don't know much about the hero, and like I said, a lot of people think he's trash, so I don't really see him picked up that much in Team M. But I think he might have potential, but right now there's just so many more supports that are better than him. So I don't think he really is going to be picked up for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. Whenever I played him, I just felt like he lacks the power to do anything. His first ability is the nuke that deals more damage, the higher the difference in movement speed is between you. But this is only stun, so you want to open up with it. And it's a 150 damage nuke at level 4, so that's kind of weak. But, okay, so now let's get to a hero that's a little bit more, well known. Succubus, so the Dreamhorn Redemption Grand Finals, did you watch those?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Succubus picked in 2 games, in game 2 and 3 by Complexity actually. They won both games, but I felt like Succubus didn't do a whole lot. Like, she was great in ganks, or whenever there was like a solo kill where they just had to catch a single hero. But whenever there were more than just one player, she just kind of died and didn't do a whole lot. Is that just me, or what do you think of Succubus in those games?
Well, I think Succubus here in general he has a lot of potential, especially in a solo lane. He can really dominate in a 1v1 situation because of his heartache ability, which steals the other opponent's HP, and it kind of, if you take a harass for with a Succubus, you're not going to win unless maybe you're a hero like the Mental Shaman. Pretty much any hero is going to have a really hard time against Succubus, especially because he has not only that ability to heal off other people, but say a rune spawns and you kind of just mesmerize your opponent, you have the ability to have a little bit of extra time to move around and kind of get in a position where you want to be, either to make, like I said, get a rune or even try to kill them. But I think another reason why Succubus is a really strong hero is not just because of those two skills and him being a really, really good CC hero, but in this current metagame, somebody's always picking a hard carry, and his first skill, I don't know the exact numbers, but it decreases the percent, I believe, of attack damage that a hero deals for around 10 seconds or so. And I think that's really important because if you can get that off onto a Mage Bane or a Dark Lady right before they enter a fight, it will have a huge impact having a hero that does 100 less damage in the early to mid game stage or even in the late game stage.
Yeah, okay. Now you mentioned the current meta game. This is actually something I have been noticing. It's very difficult to just pin down what is the current metagame, or is that just me? Because back in the day, like, I have been watching Heroes of Nero for ages now, the Honkas and all that fun stuff. And back in the day, like, first we had the tri-lane metagame, which then evolved into like a 2-2-1 style a lot of the times. And then we had a very gank-heavy metagame, and it was always very obvious just what was going on. But right now, I just feel like it's kind of random. We have teams like Complexity, they always pick the same lineup, pretty much, with the one hard carry, and then just try to support him, very similar to the tri-lane style back then. And we see a lot of junglers, but how would you pin down this metagame? What do you think is the metagame right now?
Well, like you were saying, tri-lanes were kind of a huge kind of thing that stood out in the metagame a while ago. And then they kind of moved on to a dual lane and kind of having a jungler. A jungler was kind of a huge like advancement that Han went through, where they pretty much every team had a jungler, and it was a pseudo tri-lane most of the time. Not always, though. And that's kind of how people laned. And then I believe after that, it was kind of... the metagame was kind of weird at that point. It was still, it still included a jungler and kind of doing something with that lineup, or having maybe two mid. That was also something that like happened almost every game. In games in tournaments like DreamHack, there wasn't that much of the solo mid concept anymore. It kind of faded away. But up to now, I think that most teams are playing exactly like Complexity are. Lately, at least this past, I think, 1 or 2 months, everybody's pretty much always having a jungler and having a pseudo tri-lane short lane with a suicide and a mid. And if they're not doing that, then it might be a dual mid and a dual short lane, and then usually having a suicide. So that's what we mostly see right now, and I'd say that's kind of the metagame where a team pretty much picks a hard carry and free farms it. Because pretty much any other lineup against a lineup like Complexities, where they always do that, if you pick anything else besides a hard carry against those teams, it's really risky, because if you make one mistake, you lose. So I feel like everybody's kind of adapting to what they're doing now in tournament games.
Yeah. Okay, now, those hard carries, we see, like, we got the Mage Bane, I guess, the Dark Lady, Silhouette, Forsaken Archer, Draconis. These are the 5 we get to see a lot. But there are still others out there, I feel like. Like, what's up with Kronos or Madman? Why did these die out? Why does nobody pick up those? Are they just weak, or... Like, I feel like the Kronos ultimate is amazing. I think the Kronos ultimate just allows for a great setup. You blink in, use the ultimate, and then your team got all the time in the world if you do it well. And overall provides a lot of utility. But nobody ever picks that hero. Like, is there any reason to that? Am I just not seeing it right, or why is that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, Kronos is one of those heroes which the ultimate is probably one of the strongest ultimates for hard carry in the game. But then again, I mean, you have heroes like Magebane and Dark Lady who will not only just farm faster and are more effective with, for example, a Dark Lady with a Rune Axe is going to do a lot in a team fight, or a Silhouette with a Nullstone than a Kronos with a Rune Axe. It's the hero needs a lot more farm to be used in general. I mean, not saying that Magebane and other heroes don't benefit a lot from having farm as well, but Kronos just needs a bit more to be at that stage where he can do more in team fights. His ultimate is pretty much the only thing you can use, and I mean, besides that, you have like another reason why he's not used that much is because heroes like Dark Lady, where their skills are based on scaling well with the amount of damage that you have and giving you more damage and attack speed, or Magebane, who has a blink and kind of can move around in fights and do much. Kronos does have a time leap, but it's not to the same effect with the cooldown that it has. But he does work well with a team that has a lot of AoE, so I feel like he has potential always, and he always has. But there's just better hard carries right now than him. But I think that if you pick the right team around Kronos, like a AoE based team, and a team that doesn't require that much farm, because Kronos will need to take most of it, especially in the jungle, etc. And if you can get him on a safe lane against a suicide, then you can work him in. But it's just a bit more risky running a Kronos because his farming utility is just not as easy as other heroes.
Okay, and now I also mentioned the Madman. Is it just, I guess with the Madman it's just that he's lacking like any stuns, silence, anything like that, probably?
Yeah, Madman is another really good hero. He has an escape mechanism, he has a slow, his ultimate, and his third skill both give him attack speed and the ability to crit. And yeah, at the same time, he farms very fast as well. But the reason why I think he's not picked up is he can get countered pretty easily by like a bound die pickup early game, which is what a lot of teams are doing. And that's kind of unfortunate because, yeah, lately, like I said, a lot of teams are picking up bound die, and it's just, you can't really use that hero to its full extent. And generally, when you see that hero, you don't really see him in a lane where he's 1v0 kind of free farming. You always see him in a solo role. And for example, suicide or mid. And right now in this current metagame, you need heroes which are mid or suicide to have a huge effect in team fights. Like early on, like for example, Witch Slayer, who has the ultimates and has a lot of roaming ability, or Polywog Priest, who has wards and can drop them, or Plague Rider, who has a nice ultimate and also has a really good laning presence, or even Wretched Hag with AoE or Bubbles. Those heroes who don't need that much farm, but I haven't really seen Madman run as a carry in a farming lane where he isn't really against anybody, or even in a dual lane. But in the current way that people play him, which is a solo role, he just isn't as effective as other heroes in the sense that he can't really roam and gank early on or commit in team fights until late game.
Okay, now you mentioned the Witch Slayer, and with the Witch Slayer, there's something I think is kind of funny, because back in the day, everybody only used him as a support. And he was actually a pretty popular support hero at that. A lot of teams picked him up. And now, he just suddenly turned into that solo mid, or I guess solo 1v1 somewhere, a role, where he just gets farm, gets a portal key, and then plays very aggressive early on, and you try to give him as many levels as possible using that silver bullet to just instantly gank down anyone. Now, I heard a story about Angry Testy just telling someone, basically, some competitive players, that if you use a jungler instead of a regular tri-lane, you basically have a tri-lane, except that one of the supports is getting farmed. And from that point on, everybody used junglers. Now, what happened with Witch Slayer? Like, that change came out of nowhere. You first saw him picked up as a support all the time, then you didn't see him at all, and then suddenly he's back as that solo mid hero. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, I wasn't very, much around when he was run as support in the game, but it's fine because I kind of understand why he's not picked up as a support that much anymore. First of all, it's because his ultimate is very, very effective, and you want to get that as early as possible and kind of move around like a hero like Bubbles as well. And on the support role, he's not really going to do much early on if he doesn't have boots he doesn't really have range with his stun to hit anybody, and his miniature is a really really low cast, or it's the morph pretty much. It doesn't really last that long at early levels. So I think that one of the main reasons is that he needed more XP as a solo hero, and he benefits a lot more than other heroes in that role as well. For example, even a hero like a Luna, who's run as a ward bitch today, can do really well in the solo lane, and she benefits as well with levels, which enhance her second skill to do a lot more damage early on. So I think, first of all, that's kind of the main point, is that he needs solo XP. But his transition from a support to mid is kind of... I just think that... I remember playing like Impunity or Southeast Asian teams who run him as a support in a lane, and he just doesn't have the laning presence that other heroes do right now. He doesn't really have the ability to stand up and harass, because if he does that, he can get caught so out of position. Unlike heroes like a Luna, which if you choose to go on them, they kind of stun and get out. Witch Slayer doesn't have that same ability, because if he does turn around and stun, it's a much longer cast time as well for him to do that. So he kind of lost his laning presence in that 2v2 lane. But any support works against a suicide. It's just his ability isn't as strong as other supports right now, and at the same time, you want to get him as much XP as possible in the other game.
Okay, so I only want to ask you one last question, and then we are done. So,
Right.
who do you think is the strongest hero in the competitive and in the pub scene right now?
In the competitive scene, I'd say, depending on the role, but right now I'd probably pick I'd probably say Draconis and Dark Lady are probably the two strongest heroes in the competitive scene right now. They're pretty much either picked or banned every game, just because of the amount of farm that they can take in the least amount of time, especially Draconis, without even needing really any farm. And at the same time, they both have really good teamfight potential. So those heroes I'd probably put in the top tier bracket right now for a competitive scene. I mean, there are other heroes as well that you're always going to see in games either picked or banned, like Witch Slayer and Polybog Priest, because they have a lot of potential if you know how to play them. But heroes like Dark Lady and Draconis, they're rarely going to fail at their role. As long as you know how to farm on that hero, you're never going to be behind. So those two heroes I'd for sure put in the top tier bracket for competitive scene. As for TMM, I'd say Draconis applies there as well, but you kind of need a team around him in TMM, because you can't really play the game like it's a scrim and just trust your team to let you farm and not, feed. But TMM.
Let's just say solo queue. So you don't have a team to rely on. You got 4 other players that think you are the biggest retard on earth that can't manage to get any creep kills at all while they are running into the enemy tower feeding. Who do you think is the strongest hero in that scenario?
I mean, of course, it depends on the bracket as well, because any high-level TMM game is going to be kind of like a scrim in the sense that you're picking the same heroes that you do.
Yeah, that's
generally.
actually true. Yeah.
But I'd say like in a lower TMM, if like you really want to crush a bracket or something, I really like heroes with a lot of early nuking potential in the early game, not necessarily carries. Heroes like a Luna work really well in TMM, not just because they can be played as support or carry, but if you do play them in that mid role, it's really hard to lose against a Luna mid. So that's probably one of the heroes that I think is very, very valuable. Of course, in competitive as well as TMM. And some junglers as well are really good in TMM, because you're rarely going to have somebody who picks a War Beast on the enemy team and then you're going to try to shut him down. It's not really going to happen. So, of course, nobody picks them in TMM that much, but I think that if you were to pick a hero like Wild Soul or War Beast in a game like TMM, they have the ability to just kind of be stupid heroes and just farm the whole game and just take over TMM, because nobody really understands what's going on. But, by the way, Wild Soul is also one of the top tier, I think, competitive heroes right now, which is almost banned and picked every game. If you're against a team who knows how to play him, that's the important part.
Okay, I really like that. Nobody ever agrees with me that Warbeast is strong, so yeah. That hero is so good. Anyways, okay, well, thank you. Any shoutouts you want to give to like 200 to 600 people?
Shout out to all my old teammates. Shout out to S2 for making a great game and keeping the competitive scene alive. And shout out to this tournament that is being hosted by S2, which 3 teams are going to be lucky enough to go to DreamHack 4 in terms of whoever wins. So good luck to everybody as well in that sense.
Yes, okay. Well, then, thank you for joining me, and I guess that's it.